You're listening to the Climate Dispatch podcast, presented by Sierra Club Angeles Chapter and Stranded Astronaut Productions. Available everywhere you listen to podcasts, we cover the stories of the climate crisis, from celebrating the wins to breaking down our fears, all while sharing collective hopes for the future. I'm your host, Taya Jeanette, and we're back this week with a part 2 on water, looking towards the solutions in water conservation, how to create real change through education and accountability, and what a future with water independence might look like. Last week, we took a dive into the history of land grabbing, water diversion, and urbanization behind Los Angeles' water sources, particularly the Los Angeles Aqueduct that transports water from Payahunadu, also known by its colonial name, the Owens Valley. But the water issues in Southern California are just too vast of a topic to capture in one single episode. We covered where LA historically and currently gets its water from, but the question remains, where could LA get its water from? To understand how local and statewide change can be driven through advocacy, legislation, and community organizing, I turned to 2 dedicated water advocates who are working at the intersection of policy and grassroots action. I'm joined again by charming Evelyn, chair of the Southern California Sierra Club Water Committee, alongside Connor Everts, water advocate and executive director of the Southern California Watershed Alliance. Charming and Connor have both worked in water conservation here in Southern California for decades, experiencing both water efficiency wins and being lost in policy gridlock. They've worked across projects in groundwater replenishment, aquifer restoration, stormwater capture, and water efficiency standards for public and private buildings. In addition to policies and water infrastructure, water conservation also starts with behavior change, like capturing rainwater in your own backyard with water storage barrels, or swapping out water-intensive lawns for native plant landscaping. Charming saw an opportunity to set an example for this behavior change, starting with City Hall.
When we started the Water Committee, our resolution was to make water conservation permanent, really to change behavior. And we thought, why not start with City Hall? That would be the best place to start. We had a meeting with then Council Member Everts with his office, and we said, this is what we would like to see, this is what we would like City Hall to do. At the time, I remember he was like, but where is the funding? Where are we getting funding? So we had to go back to the drawing board and really think of those things. We had a meeting with Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa at the time, and they had the Occupy movement. And once he dispersed that Occupy movement, there was no more grass at City Hall. And we immediately called and sent a letter saying, hey, there's no more grass. You have no excuse. Let's do this. And he rose to the occasion, and he invited a group of non-profits and community benefit organizations. And we all met and we had the discussion about what we would like to see, the impact it would have, and how it would look when City Hall is saying we need to conserve more, show people. It culminated with the mayor inviting lots of groups to come down on Martin Luther King Day to actually plant and mulch and so on. And so when you go down to City Hall and you see these drought-tolerant plants, know that these were done by our hands. Lots of volunteers actually doing the work, living the talk. It's one of the things that still gives me great pleasure every time I go down to City Hall and I see the toyon tree with the berries and I see people just enjoying the space. And that led other city departments to change and put in, whether it was bioswales, and now if you go to like LADWP, you see all of these changes that occurred because of that one change.
I love hearing that story and the transition as an example. Andy Schrader was the environmental staffer for Councilman Everts, and he was dedicated to this. He and his wife actually went from occupying and camping outside and killing the grass, not on purpose, but just because people were packed in there. But it also takes someone on the inside who's working and is dedicated and works with us to make it happen. We need to set our priorities correctly. We need to say that it's not just a drought or a time period we're going to do this, but forever. Conservation can be behavioral and just The change doesn't cost a lot, but it does take education, support, and an ongoing basis. There needs to be a new army of people stepping up and picking water as the issue because it impacts so much, especially in Southern California.
Not everyone has the time to attend every water board meeting or review every water agency's conduct. That's why organizations like the Sierra Club keep a close eye on the issues and those leading the way for enacting water conservation efforts. As we continue to hopefully see more policies that encourage better water resilience, accountability for water agencies will be increasingly necessary, and the public's perception of their performance in this does actually matter to them. In fact, a few years ago, Charming caused quite a stir between some of those agencies when she helped launch a water scorecard that rated how well they were doing in terms of conservation.
Oh my God, the water agencies, some of them were so up in arms and they were just like, you need to do this again. You gave us a low score. And then you had people like LADWP and Burbank, they got the higher scores. And so they were very, very, very happy.
The Sierra Club Angeles chapter released the Water Conservation Measures Scorecard to rate local cities for their efforts to mandate water conservation in Los Angeles and Orange counties. At the time, there wasn't anything in place to hold the water agencies accountable.
I remember when we did it, we thought we were going into a drought and the drought was just about starting. And we just really wanted to know where everyone was because there was no mandatory conservation at the time.
The water scorecard ranked cities using 19 criteria that addressed appropriate water use, avoiding water waste, improving building standards, and prescribing water-efficient business practices. Only 5 of the 122 area cities received the coveted best score for water efficiency. But it wasn't meant to punish the water agencies. It was to provide them with an opportunity to update and expand existing water conservation measures and meet federal and state water efficiency standards.
It actually made the agencies offer better rebates and improve their conservation programs. It had such a wide-ranging effect. And I can tell you, maybe up till about 5 years ago, I was getting calls from those that got low ratings asking me, when are you doing another scorecard? Because we have improved so much and we need to know that you recognize that we have improved. And so that just tells you the domino effect that this scorecard had at the time, and a conservation would kick in if there was, phase 1 of a drought, phase 2 of a drought, phase 3 of a drought. Now you're seeing something completely different. They are not removing those phases anymore. It's like phase 1 is now permanent. Or, watering on alternate days, it's now permanent. We now have the State Water Board last year, the legislation that made conservation a way of life in California. Is it perfect? No. Is it everything that we wanted? No. But you know what? We have to start from somewhere. And we can build on top of that.
Charming is now spearheading a water quality scorecard with the Sierra Club Angeles chapter. Local water resiliency isn't just about conservation and efficiency. It's also about building local resilience in our communities and moving closer to guaranteeing access to clean water for everyone. So when we're talking about water conservation, how do you balance these kinds of solutions that we're looking at with the needs of right now? What access people need today versus looking at the future of what water independence can look like tomorrow?
I would say that you have to consider people's ability to pay as well. In many areas, renters are a huge percentage. So in areas like the little town of Maywood and other towns in Southeast LA, where the renter percentage is even higher, they don't have a direct voice. But that hasn't kept people from organizing and working on those issues. What we came up with is people deliver their own programs. They do education, and these programs went through high schools and other levels, and you provide jobs. And that's, I think, a model that hasn't been repeated enough. But you have to give people rate relief, and the best way of doing that is by giving them greater control of their own water, allowing them to capture and reuse on site, allowing them to have the incentives to do the conservation. Generally, we don't think that way, but we should.
In Southern California, we talk about everyone having the human right to water. We do mean that, but we do actually have a long way to go to make it equitable, because there are places in California where people have to truck in water and they are using bottled water with all the microplastics. That's a whole other topic. We really have to sit down and come to the table, and it has to be all of us, not just the agencies. It has to be the NGOs like Sierra Club, Pacoima Beautiful, the community benefit organizations. All of us should have a seat at that table to really discuss large-scale solutions and how we get water to the people who need water and how to make it equitable. Whether it's a pure water recycling facility or we clean up contamination, these costs are passed on to the consumer. We do not want to brush over it. We want to be aware and let consumers know we are fighting for you, but there are certain things that need to be done, particularly on a local level, to make sure when you turn on that faucet, you actually have clean, accessible water. But keep in mind that there are some of us who actually don't have that. It's really important to know that and to realize that there are folks that really cannot afford to pay their water. Those that can't afford to pay, they are the ones that use the least amount of water.
There are ambitious targets to reach water independence in Southern California. Some forecasts hope to see local water be our primary source by 2050. But many of the larger policies to reach these goals won't be implemented until 2040, or even 2075 for some, making it difficult to level the needs of today with the hopes of tomorrow. What is your vision of a water-resilient future, not just in Los Angeles, but on a global level? What do we need to be changing in terms of all of those contexts to really achieve a future where we are water independent and resilient?
If you are in a water-rich area, then it is about behavioral change and realizing that water is a finite resource. Within California, I would say I would be content if I know everyone has access to clean, affordable water without having to truck water in or get bottled water to bathe in. The only way we can achieve that is if all of us are sitting at the same table, having the same discussion at the same time. Diversity of thought brings solutions. If there is no diversity of thought, then we will never have solutions. And if the water industry is continued to be run by people who are only looking to make a profit, or they don't want subsidies taken and they only want to have their water rights so that they can use as much water as they can, then we are never going to get there.
Water is not a commodity. Water should not be privatized. It's a resource. We are to be the stewards of those resources. But how we make real change remains the challenge, from the very basics, that everyone has access to clean, safe, and affordable water. The solutions have to look at the right questions to start with. And to do that, we need to make water and people and all life the priority, not profit. We should be looking into the future and realizing that future is now.
Water solutions need to be creative if we hope to reduce water waste, improve irrigation pathways, and redistribute water to the areas surrounding the LA River. One interdisciplinary studio is doing just that, by bridging the gap between art, science, and activism with their project Bending the River. Bringing together artists with government agencies, local communities, and activists, it's part infrastructure project, part artistic exploration, part educational and cultural tool, and an adaptive reuse of LA River infrastructure.
The soil and the material beneath our feet is still alive and ready to kind of come and repair itself.
I sat down with Kelly Majewski, the project manager and education community outreach manager for the art and research hub behind this project, Metabolic Studio.
Metabolic Studio is a studio for the environmental artist Lauren Bond, who is the visionary for the studio and who had the original idea for the Bending the River project. The Metabolic Studio is located between the Los Angeles River and the LA State Historic Park, which is at the base of Chinatown. The site that is now the LA State Historic Park was once a defunct rail yard. It sat in the floodplain of the LA River, and it was used until it got flooded out multiple times and then was no longer in service. And so it sat there vacant, the property, for a really long time.
To understand the significance of this location, LA State Historic Park may now be a 32-acre green space and the site of numerous cultural events, from an annual community kite festival to vegan food fest. But in the late 1800s, this site was known as the River Station, a bustling point on the Southern Pacific Railroad line. After the rail yard was abandoned in the 1990s, this space became a toxic, empty lot.
So with all of the rail yard activities that happened there, the site was a brownfield and highly toxic materials in the soil and all across the site based on that land use of the train yard. A lot of community members were pushing back because obviously a 32-acre piece of property becomes a really high-valued piece of property by developers and people who want to kind of make housing and other types of things on it. The community that surrounded the area were really pushing back, and Lauren was one of those people that really joined the fight to kind of keep it from development. The California State Parks actually got involved and purchased that property. Lauren had this idea of being able to cleanse the soil of the state parks while they decided what they were going to do with it. They didn't have the money to fix it or to clean it up at that point. So they were kind of just holding it so that it wouldn't be developed. And so Lauren had this vision of why don't we use corn? Corn has all of these cleansing powers that she could plant this field of corn to help remediate the soil.
Suddenly, the Not a Cornfield project was born. Lauren Bond set out to plant 30,000 pounds of corn seed and produce an agricultural cycle of corn that would spark the remediation of the site's soil. Located on this land was the Zanja Madre, or Mother Ditch, Los Angeles' first public works program spearheaded by indigenous communities and Spanish settlers in the 1700s. A ditch that flowed water from the LA River to their plaza.
We're right next to the LA River. The LA River once irrigated this land naturally prior to channelization. And so the idea of this water that is just being wasted and going out to the ocean, that maybe we could rethink our resources and use that to grow the corn. And it worked great. They were driving trucks down there to get the water, bringing it up, irrigating the corn on the site.
The corn flourished, people gathered to witness the growth and share stories, and life began to return to this abandoned site.
Until LADWP said, absolutely not, that's illegal. That water is actually ours. And so it started this kind of very long conversation of how can we use that water? And she was told the only way to get that water would be to have a personal water right.
For most people, that task would be daunting. But over the course of 10 years, Lauren Bond secured over 75 permits and approvals, as well as a personal water right to make the project a reality.
The work that's in the river right now consists of a really small grate we call the Great Grate in the low flow channel that through a series of pipes connects to a 50-foot deep well on our site, which is where the project stands at the moment as we are defining kind of the next phase, which will be water to be pulled up out of that well and to move through cleansing and then onto the state park to irrigate the floodplain once again. And all of that will be run on solar and will contain hopefully a piece of that bigger story of the importance of the water the original water, LA River water, being on the floodplain and kind of allowing the ecosystem to regenerate itself.
The Bending the River project unveils the floodplain below the concrete channel and actually lifts a portion of water from the LA River to Metabolic Studio. There, the water is treated through native wetlands and redistributed back into LA State Historic Park and other local green spaces. Hardscaping elements like concrete can actually inhibit the water cycle, acting as a barrier between rainfall and the ground, and preventing water from seeping into the soil. This results in an overall loss of groundwater, the water source located beneath the Earth's surface, that can form aquifers or underground water reserves.
Throughout this project, we've reclaimed the floodplain that we took out of the river when we installed the 300 feet of vitrified clay pipe. And when we pulled the concrete up to put those pipes in, Lauren noticed that the river bed, there's a river beneath it, right? So once we lifted that concrete, there's this kind of really beautiful, crystal clear, kind of teal water running over some really beautiful floodplain material. We tested it. It was very clean. We moved it to one of our studio sites and kind of left it. And just by being exposed to sun and rainwater, it exploded. There was a ton of latent seed within that floodplain. So tons of natives, tons of plants that would have been here had we not channelized the river.
We're seeing, we concretized the river way back when as basically a way to contain it. And that is not having a relationship with the river. And a big part of what you're doing is giving people back that relationship. So I know you've led these educational tours, taking participants out to learn more about the project and reconnect with their own relationship with the LA River. What does that look like to go on the tour? And have there been any key moments of watching people react to seeing what you all are doing?
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the most fun parts and the most heartwarming parts for me. And I know from the majority of the team is to actually be able to talk about the work and convene with the public and also hear what they have to say, because we're all teachers and we're all learners, right? When we were in the river doing the construction, we would take people down in little vans and kind of walk the bottom of the river and show people wherever we were at in the construction process and kind of talk through how that relates, again, to the Owens Valley, to where your drinking water comes from, to all of the kind of infrastructural pieces, but also the beauty of seeing the plants and the little creatures that are crawling at our undevelopment that has the floodplain. It was really great to take people down there because it gave them a whole different understanding of infrastructure. It made infrastructure cool, like most people don't want to talk about. So that was a really lovely thing to have happen. And, we've been growing and learning every process of bending the river as it opens up new ideas. So the lifting of the concrete to realize, there's a river down there. There's clean water. There's floodplain, started a new spark and a series of experiments. The second part, which was moving through the warehouse spaces and seeing the plants grow out of the soil there and really understanding this warehouse spaces here used to be a Standard Oil site. So the soil is really toxic underneath, which is the case for many of the lands in Los Angeles and especially along the river. So thinking about how can we kind of let nature go back and heal itself when a lot of this is toxic. We obviously don't want to expose people to any toxicity. So that is a lot of the soil remediation experiments that are happening here is how can we actually take care of that soil? And, that has been really eye-opening for a lot of people to understand how toxic soil is, to understand that there's a potential for ways to deal with it in a more environmentally friendly way. These tours are really great because we're able to pull a lot of pieces together and really get people to understand how we are part of the larger systems and look at how they all relate to each other. And we can't go on siloing things. Each action we do has a repercussion. And we need to look at that life cycle of all the elements and look at our part in that.
Outside of Metabolic Studio is a sign that reads, "Artists need to create on the same scale that society has the capacity to destroy." It's a rallying cry for all of us to take more of a stance, become more interconnected with the networks of change, and within our own communities.
We're still just such a drop in the bucket for the actual problems that we're facing. And so the only way we do this and we make change is to do it together. And like thinking about one rain collection tank to one open piece of garden or landscape, one of those puncture holes for the ecosystem, is not going to change anything. But if we have a series of those and we have this like mycelial network that connects us all, where we can share information, where we can share community and like have fun with it, but also create this network. The climate crisis and everything that's happening, the extreme weather events, all of this is speeding up, right? We need to be matching that scale and that speed of destruction. The only way we win this is if we do it together.
Tours to witness the Bending the River project will be starting back up again soon. In the meantime, Metabolic Studio has more information on the project and an ongoing live stream of Bending the River available on their website, metabolicstudio.org. Attaining a resilient, self-sustaining water future requires approaching the issue of water from every angle. From returning landscapes to indigenous stewardship, to establishing better infrastructure for local water sources, to even holding water agencies accountable, the path to water independence is possible. While the Sierra Club continues to fight for better water conservation, and projects like Bending the River find creative solutions for groundwater replenishment, you can start on your own path by planting native flora, placing rain barrels in your backyard, or reframing water as life.
Hi, it's Megan from the Sierra Club Angeles chapter, here with your weekly call to action. And this week, it's pretty simple. Our last 2 episodes have been all about water, and if you're feeling inspired to take action, we invite you to join our Water Committee. The Water Committee works on protecting local water resources, advancing sustainable water policies, and advocating for equitable access to clean water across Los Angeles. You can find out more and join at SoCalWaterSierraClub.org. That's SoCalWaterSierraClub.org.
Thank you for listening to the Climate Dispatch podcast. I'm your host, Taya Jeanette. Playing us out is local indie rock band Kill Dream Magazine with their song, Migratory Patterns. Climate Dispatch is a production of Stranded Astronaut and the Sierra Club Angeles chapter, produced by myself, Tay Jeanette, Meg Pruce, and Megan Spatz. Audio engineering and editing by Maxfield Biggs, original theme music and score by Phil Hamilton, and graphics by Cirrus Marlo Sama.